Hey everybody, Dave here, and I just wanted to take a quick moment to make a follow-up video to the Age of Ashes Should You GM video that I released earlier this week. That was the first video of a proposed series to kind of hold me over until the remaster books come out and we can dive into more of the crunchier topics of rules and so forth. And at the end of it, I asked for feedback of any suggestions you folks might have to improve those videos. And the amount of feedback you folks gave me was incredible. I greatly appreciate all the different comments you left. And so today's video is going to be focused on providing some of the information that wasn't in that GM overview video for Age of Ashes that several of you are requesting. So first of all, spoiler warning, just like with the GM overview, I will be giving some spoilers about the Age of Ashes adventure path. If you are a prospective player, stop watching now. Still click the like button, but you can stop watching the video now. We don't want to spoil anything for you. And speaking of spoilers, one of the comments that I got was, why are you so concerned about spoilers, Dave? You said there were spoilers in the video at the beginning of the video. You put spoilers in all caps in the title. So why is it that when I was doing the video, or why is the final product of the GM overview have certain points in it where I say, like, I'm not going to spoil this for you, especially in book 6, like I really want the conclusion to be a surprise, so I'm not going to spoil this. If I gave warnings, I should be free to just spoil whatever I want. And if someone did not heed the warning, then that's, on them. They take responsibility for that. And I completely see where you're coming from. I agree with that in philosophy. But the reason why I want to keep spoilers kind of contained in these adventure overviews is for that person who might come out and watch 3 different GM overview adventure videos of mine to kind of see which of those 3 they want to run. So they'll watch the 3 videos and then they'll choose one to GM themselves. And then there's other 2 that, who knows, maybe their buddy wants to GM. Maybe there'll be a player in a game that's running those campaigns. And I don't want anybody to feel like just because they viewed one of these videos in preparation for GMing that they're now no longer going to be able to play in those campaigns or won't have fun playing in those campaigns because they already know beat by beat exactly every little thing that's going to happen. So that's why I am, even though I have a spoiler warning, even though this is for GMs who are going to read the entire modules, I still want to keep spoilers, especially big ones, contained, just so that if anybody does view this and decide not to run it, they can feel free to play it later if they have a friend who wants to run it. So some of the other things that were requested included the Stronghold Mechanics. In the video, I said, well, one of the big additions to Age of Ashes to the game as a whole is it includes special mechanics for managing a stronghold. It's one thing for me to say those mechanics exist, but it's clear that several of you out there want to know more about what that system entails. So basically, in Age of Ashes, at the end of the first book, the players gain legal ownership of the ruins of Citadel Alterian. And for the next 5 books, or really the next 4 books, they have the opportunity to invest money and time and resources in rebuilding that citadel, that keep. And the rules that are provided are fairly general, and they're very much targeted to the specific scenario of your players have inherited ruins, and they want to turn those ruins into a fortification of some sort. So a lot of the rules deal with, well, you can't start repairing the citadel until you clean it. So you have to invest so much time and work hours into just like going through all of the abandoned rooms and taking out the broken chairs and tables. Every door in the dungeon has been, decayed and ruined. Well, you got to before you can do any work in there, you got to take all of this stuff out. And then if you want to start repairing, well, it's going to cost you so much to repair a stairway into the basement. It's going to cost so much for you to repair a stairway going to the battlements. It's going to cost so much to repair the walls. And not just repairing just general things, but there are basic tasks that like anybody can do, and there are specialized tasks like you need to find someone who has expert proficiency in engineering or lore engineering or what have you. I forget exactly what all the different skill categories are, but you need to go out and find people capable of leading the efforts to do these very specialized things. So it gives you a breakdown of what those tasks are, how much time they will cost, how much money they'll cost, and who can lead the efforts of doing these specific repairs. It also includes like a table of, hey, these are the NPCs you've encountered through the campaign. Like, this person might be really, really, really good at rebuilding a certain part of the facility. So I hope you build a positive relationship with that NPC. The sort of game mechanic-y part of it is the system does not want your players to have to spend the next 6 months in the town personally repairing the Citadel. So the flow of it is like on a Monday afternoon, they'll go down to Breachill to the town square. This is where everybody congregates on at the beginning of every week to try to find work. And a player has to use their social skills, has to use diplomacy or maybe intimidation, but probably diplomacy to say, we're rebuilding the Citadel. We need 50 strong people to come help us. And we're going to pay you X amount of money, and, we'll pay you in advance for 3 weeks of work. And from there, depending on how well they do on that diplomatic social encounter, determines how many people they get for that period of time to do the work. And then they can hire someone to serve as an administrator. And that administrator is there on site overseeing the day-to-day tasks, while the heroes are then free to go about adventuring and pursuing the heroic aspect of the campaign. And meanwhile, back home, all this work is getting taken care of, provided that before they step through a magical portal to the next location, they've paid in advance, they've done the checks, they've been able to hire enough people and so forth. I highly recommend you use some sort of a calendar to track this. I think I've got like a Google calendar that I use in the campaign that I've been running. I don't use it, but I've also seen somewhere online there's like either an Excel spreadsheet or a Google sheet where they specifically designed it for this task with little drop downs where you can say, from this day to this day is this task that's being done. So that's the gist of Stronghold Mechanics. It doesn't get into the meat and potatoes of, well, if you build the walls out of wood, they're going to cost less, and they can be done quicker. And if you build them out of stone, they're going to be more expensive and take longer and have a higher hardness. And it doesn't get into all these the minutia of all these little things. I remember building a stronghold back in AD&D First Edition, where I think it was even in the DM's guide. There was all kinds of information about how you can customize it, and if you want to build a wizard's tower, it's going to cost you this amount of money, and this is what you get. You don't get that level of customization with the Stronghold Mechanics. There is a mechanic for like once you've gutted out the interior. It was a Hell Knight Citadel, so like it had a lot of like administrative and legal offices. And once you gut those out, you can say like, this is going to be my alchemist lab, and this is going to be a barracks, and this is where going to be a shrine to my god. It does give you some ability to customize it, but not like far-reaching things like changing the material that the buildings are made of, or adding a building, or like I said, a wizard's tower or something. There might be something in there for repairing a tower. I don't remember exactly all of the different options, But the bottom line is, it's a good system for the intended purpose, which is rebuilding a set of ruins for a keep that players have been gifted. It doesn't get into buying or purchasing land and that sort of stuff either. Now, in book 6, when the forces of Dayhawk attack Breachill and the Citadel, that also doesn't get into like siege mechanics and like real nitty gritty stuff. It's a system that uses victory points, and there is a confrontation with a manifestation of Dayhawk sort of at the end of it, and depending on if you chose to repair the defenses of the Citadel or not, will affect that encounter with the manifestation of Dayhawk. Basically, Dayhawk's spirit or whatever, a portion of his power is attacking the Citadel, and has 3 actions, can make 3 attacks, and I think by default all 3 of those attacks go to the players, but the players can choose to basically use defenders around them and the Citadel to, I guess, kind of taunt aggro, so to speak, from Dayhawk. And the stronger your defenses are, the more attacks can be redirected from the party to the Citadel. Thus, increasing the player's survivability in that encounter. That's really where the benefits come into for repairing the Citadel in Book 6. So that's a quick look at Stronghold Mechanics. Another thing that a lot of people said is, Dave, we really want to hear your opinion on this. Like, it's great that we have this sort of a very objective walkthrough of what to expect in the campaign, but what about my opinions? Like, do I like this campaign? Do I hate this campaign? Are there things that I think were brilliant? Are there parts of it that I think were lackluster? And to give you my perspective, the reason why I didn't approach it as a review is, in general, I don't like making reviews for game products that I haven't played. And it's a tall ask to ask someone to actually GM an entire 6-book level 1 to 20 campaign before they offer their opinions on it. From my point of view, there have been a lot of times in my life where I've opened an adventure module and I've read it and I thought, this is the greatest thing ever. And then when I actually brought it to the table and ran it, it turned out to not be the greatest thing ever. So I'm apprehensive to give an opinion on this product when I have not played all 6 books of it. It's kind of like asking someone to, or valuing the opinion of someone who read the instruction booklet to a game, to a video game, or to a board game, and then went online and made a video sharing their opinions and their reviews, but never actually played that game. Like, you wouldn't respect that opinion, right? So that's why I tend, even with like the books, Secrets of Magic, Guns and Gears, I do previews. I do objective previews. I don't get into whether or not it's a 3-star book or a 4-star book, because there's no way I'm ever going to have time to actually play every class, every ancestry, every rule out of those books. That all said, enough people have said that they really want to hear my opinions on Age of Ashes, that I'm going to give you kind of my pros and cons of the campaign today. But I just ask for everybody to take this with a grain or truckload of salt, that I have not played or GM'd this entire campaign. I am currently running this campaign with my local friends. We have completed the first 3 books. We're halfway through the adventure path. So I can certainly give you some opinions on this first books, and kind of I'll give you opinions on the last 3 books as well. But just understand, my table's not the same as yours. This is very subjective, and I haven't played it. So, my opinion may not be as valid as somebody who has run the entire campaign. So first up, I'm going to start with giving you my cons, and then we'll end on a higher note with the pros. The first thing is, the rumors are true. This is a brutally difficult campaign. This is the first adventure path for Pathfinder 2nd Edition, and I believe some of the designers at Paizo have even publicly said, like, we were still working out mechanics and balance, and we hadn't really found the secret equation to balancing encounters when we made Age of Ashes. So it is very difficult. It is brutally difficult. I had a TPK in book 1. I had another TPK in book 2. No TPKs in book 3, thank goodness. It is a campaign where you will want to go on the Paizo forums. You will want to get insight from people to say, how should I adjust this and what should be nerfed? And those threads already exist. Just go search and you'll find them for certain. To give you some insight on where my stumbling points were with difficulty, in the first book when the players are investigating Citadel Alterian, they were in a combat in a dungeon, and one of their foes tried to flee, and they just let that enemy run. And this enemy is an intelligent sentient creature, and I tend to play them like intelligent creatures. So if a soldier runs, they're not running for the hills. They're running to the nearest room where their buddies are, so they can say, "Hey, Steve, Phil, and Katie are getting slaughtered down the hallway. Let's go save them." So that's what happened. They let an enemy flee. That enemy alerted another room of enemies, and the combined forces, the players just got overwhelmed, and they did not take opportunity to flee. They should have run, in my opinion. And they stood and they fought. And I guess TPK isn't the right word. I didn't kill them. They got captured. But I did have them make a whole new party of PCs who, at the end of that module, they were able to free the first party of characters and then choose which of their 2 characters they wanted to play moving forward. So then what I'm not entirely certain is the difficulty of the campaign so much as it is my players are all 5e players. They're all used to having a lot of leeway in combat encounters, and for combat to be very forgiving of their tactical mistakes. This was their first time playing Pathfinder of either edition, and they weren't ready for this concept of, you know what, you probably have to sometimes cut your losses and run. In book 2, there are 2 places in book 2 that you want to be very careful with. There is one area, I think it's chapter 3 of book 2 in the Mwangi Expanse, where there's a mining operation, and it's full of enemies, and it's a big, huge, wide open area that's divided into little encounter sections, but it's a big, wide open area. And so the logical thing is, you get into a fight, it's reasonable that this could attract attention from other parts of this big, wide open field in this mine. Like, people are going to see you throwing fireballs, 40 yards away. And that did not result in a TPK, but I would say to prospective GMs, find that area, I think it's chapter 3, and really think hard about some excuses as to why neighboring enemies are not being aggroed when it's a great big wide open area. Now, the area that I did have a TPK in is later. There is an encounter in a temple to Dayhawk, and when you walk in the front door, you're greeted by, well, first of all, before you can get to the front door, you got to fight through all of these the frog people. I forget what they're called, the Billywogs, something like that. But you fight through them, and then you open the front door and you enter the temple, and you're greeted with a golem. And the golem activates, and the golem is just way, way, way too brutal, especially with its anti-magic abilities. And there is a way to deactivate the golem. If you are wearing a holy symbol of Dayhawk, you can just walk right past it. It won't bother you. But like, my players weren't thinking about oh, there's a way to deactivate this thing, or there's a way to avoid it. It was we walk in a room, a big animated statue starts swinging at us while we swing back. And without getting too deep into things, that had a cascading chain of events that resulted in a TPK. I really, really strongly recommend that people either remove that golem or nerf it or make ways to deactivate it a little more clear. Like maybe there's, indraconic on the front door. There's a riddle, and the answer to the riddle is, you can wear a holy symbol to get past this thing, whatever. But I found that encounter, especially with the golem's anti-magic, just to be way too much for this particular party to handle. Another con, as I allude to in the other video, is I feel like it takes a too much of a break from the story of Dayhawk. Book 1 is we're just exploring a citadel, and at the end of that, we have this mystery of portals. It's in book 2 when they start going through those portals that they realize this whole situation with Dayhawk. And book 2 deals a lot with a cult of the dragon trying to assist Dayhawk in returning to Golarion. After that, books 3, 4, and 5 are almost entirely about the Scarlet Triad. Scarlet Triad is a group of slavers, and they have a tangential relationship. They are helping to fund the cult that's trying to restore Dayhawk. They're providing slaves to them in exchange for gold that's being mined out of the Moangi Expanse. So there are connective tissues. And every single time a person walks through any of the gates, the magical portals beneath the Citadel, they encounter some form of manifestation of Dayhawk. So there are reminders in the books 3 through 5 that Dayhawk is don't forget Dayhawk. Those reminders are there. But the day-to-day is really about the Scarlet Triad. And I feel like that is three consecutive books is just too long to step away from the main threat of the god of destruction, the draconic god of destruction, and then book 6 just to jump back into that. I don't have a whole lot of suggestions for fixing it. This is just sort of my armchair designer thinking. I think I would have preferred that that instead of this separate group being the Scarlet Triad, why couldn't you just be fighting the cult, this evil cult that's trying to bring back Dayhawk through the whole thing? In the other video I mentioned, it kind of makes sense from the point of view of slavers are a reasonable big bad evil guy for levels 5 through 15, but you don't want to be messing with a god of destruction until you're level 20. But on the other side, I feel like why did it have to be a different organization? We already have this cult in books 1 and 2. Why couldn't it have just been other parts of the same cult and still sticking with more draconic things than dealing with slavers? I also have a couple thoughts about book 3. Book 3, they go to the silver city of Cantargo in Ravnuvel, and it's sort of a sequel to the Hell's Rebels adventure path from first edition. This really takes a step away from the conflict with the Dragon Cult. I personally would have preferred that this have been its own separate standalone adventure that was all about just celebrating Hell's Rebels and not kind of, I hate to say it, but it kind of feels like it's been shoehorned into this other campaign. I think it would have been better if that had been removed or replaced with, again, another adventure about the Dragon Cult. I also think that players get really excited at the end of book 1 when they're gifted this Citadel and they say, oh, well, we got to start repairing it. There's got to be we got to get ready for an imminent attack. And it's not until that's in book 1, it's not until book 6 that pays off. And that's too long You know, I feel like players, when they're excited about that stronghold, they want to make that a bigger factor in the story. And so I would prefer maybe like book four, if book four took place in Breachill and had them use the Citadel in a way to repel a lesser threat, like not the dragon horse, not Dayhawk himself, but maybe the cult, this dragon cult. You know, maybe they build up enough of an army to lay a minor siege, just something to give an earlier payoff and have something about that castle that feels valuable. I think if you're going to GM this, maybe in between books 2 and 3 or between 3 and 4, maybe write a small scenario that's going to involve that them that's going to reward them for putting forth the effort of rebuilding the Citadel. Because the way it kind of is written is they get the ability to start repairing it at the end of book 1, and nothing happens with it at all until the beginning of book 6. And even then, the mechanical payoff is you get a boon for, I think, just one encounter, being the final phase of the dragon attack on Breachill. Another thing that I will point out in book 2 is mostly a Hexploration hex crawl through the Mwangi Expanse. My players got a little bored with that. It was very exciting at the beginning. They got bored with it fairly quick. And I think the reason is there's just a lot of hexes that are completely empty. And so there's a lot of, well, you spend a day traveling, you go into the next hex, and I reveal it on the map, and there's nothing there, and there's nothing, no real encounter. So move on to the next hex, and guess what? It's empty too. And move on to the next hex, and big surprise, it's also empty. Maybe utilized, random encounter tables for jungles. Maybe come up with some fun things that can happen in those empty hexes so that players don't get bored with it and kind of get into the mode of, just moving a piece on a board game where it was just, I'm going to move here, what happens? Nothing. Okay, I move here, what happens? Nothing. Okay, I move here, what happens? Big shock, nothing. While I'm on the topic of book 2, I'll also say that there is a NPC in it named Gerhard Pendergrast, who I personally, I like the NPC. He is this sort of boisterous archaeologist, and very much embracing like the British colonial spirit of going to a savage land full of savage people, and he's bringing a little bit of a sense of civilization, and I'm sure you know the type. I'll put a picture of him on the screen if I haven't already, and it probably speaks volumes. So he's coming to this uncivilized jungle with these uncivilized people, and he's going to try to explore it because he's a brave archaeologist and find treasures to take back, blatantly steal from the local population to put in a museum back home where he comes from, Taldor or wherever it is. And I actually like that NPC. Like, I introduced him to my players. My players immediately, caught on to what he's representing, and they hated him, and they really enjoyed the conflict with him. He's very much a snobbish bad guy, and that was great. But here's the problem with Gerhard Pendergrast, is he's scripted to appear in 2 different locations in 2 different encounters. And if your players kill him the first time they meet him, then in the second location, the adventurer literally says, if Gerhard Pendergrast is dead because your players killed him in the first encounter with him, his identical twin brother appears here, and you just have the identical twin brother play the part of Gerhard Pendergrast through this encounter. And for some of the groups out there, that sort of lighthearted playfulness, although it's silly, it might be at home in your games. For more serious and grounded games, it kind of comes off as just like a giant joke. Like really serious? His identical twin brother is here? Um, and so my advice would be just, you're a GM, come up with some excuse why Gerhard Pendergrast doesn't die the first time they meet. He gets away somehow. Because the second encounter is actually really, really, really complex and interesting. He's found an ancient temple that's an affront to his beliefs. So he has brought in kegs of gunpowder and he's going to blow up this temple. And so the players, when they arrive, he's already got these kegs set, and there are fuses, and the fight starts, and he can light the fuses, and it's a battle between Gerhard and the player, but also against the clock, because the players have to find some way of interrupting those fuses before they blow up the powder kegs and destroy this ancient temple, all because it's an affront to his scholarly beliefs. So I love the character. I love the encounters. Maybe find some other excuse then. Oh, it's his identical twin brother. And my last, well, it's not really a con, it's more of just an observation, is that in book one, the players learn the history of Breachill. They learn about the man who founded the city and under what circumstances he founded the city. And at the time, I think that's just kind of a nice story. I think there's a book they get from one of their enemies that has like the story, and then in the margins, she's written like, this is a lie, this isn't true, whatever. And at the time, I think they see like maybe there's some relevance to this. This is interesting, but nothing more is really done with that until book 6. And then in book 6, the truth behind that story becomes extremely relevant. So if you're going to run Age of Ashes, I would encourage you to find some ways to insert some reminders. In fact, with the way I'm running it, I'm planning on just basically doing a little cutscene at the beginning of books 4 and 5 that just kind of is like a cinematic cutscene of some events that illustrate what was happening in the in years past with the founding of the city, and then hopefully in book 6, when this becomes relevant, they'll see how everything kind of ties together. But introducing that little story in book 1 and then not going back to it until book 6 is probably a mistake. Find ways to keep the story of Lord Breachill and the founding of the city relevant to your players. So those were the cons, and I know it sounds like I was just harping on this adventure path and just saying it's horrible. I don't think it's a horrible adventure path at all. I think it is very difficult. I think you definitely need to take a look at the difficulty for some of these encounters. And otherwise it's just preference. Like book 3, I would have preferred that it was its own separate thing. Like if you want to play a sequel to Hell's Rebels, go play it, but it doesn't need to be here in the middle of my campaign. I don't think my players felt that at all. I think my players, none of them knowing anything about Hell's Rebels, still had a lot of fun playing it. So a lot of those cons are observations, just me being an armchair designer and what I would have done differently, but are not necessarily objectively bad things. So let's talk about some of the pros. And this video would be 4 hours long if I shared with you every single positive moment from my time running this campaign, all the great things my players did and all the fun they had. But I'm just going to kind of condense this into a couple of broad topics. First, this is an epic adventure path. This is, when I think about high fantasy storytelling, level 1 to level 20, like this is about dragons and a god of destruction. There's high stakes. The world is going to end. And the world needs a group of heroes to save it. This really kind of encapsulates that vibe in books 1 and 2 and in book 6. Again, not so much in the middle when they're dealing with the Scarlet Triad, but it ultimately is about Dayhawk. And I think they really grasped that feeling, especially in the close of the adventure path. I also think that this is a fantastic way to introduce new players to the setting of Golarion. In fact, this is brilliant. Like you start in the traditional Western European, like standard D&D sort of environment, and then you get whisked away to the Mwangi Expanse and thrown in a jungle. And so players learn that, you know what, this world is bigger than just Western European medieval fantasy. And they go through another portal and they get thrown into the desert, into a very sort of Egyptian, Middle Eastern sort of vibe in book 5. So this is a great way to teach new players about the setting. I do wish, again, not to harp on book 3 a whole lot. My apologies to the Lundines, who I think wrote it. But with this sort of structure in place, why go to another Western European medieval country? One that's really just a stone's throw from Isgir, where the Citadel is. Why not take that portal and go to Tian Sha and have a book that's an Asian themed adventure, or go to the lands of the Lenorm Kings? Like, you know, book 2, you're in a jungle and you're dealing with mosquitoes and heat and humidity, and in the next book, maybe you're thrown into the Arctic and dealing with mammoths and everything else that, you know, adventuring in the tundra would entail. It just seems to me that they took that opportunity to go to another location that's almost identical to the one they just left. So I think that was a missed opportunity. But overall, this is a great structure for introducing new players to all the different parts of Golarion. All right, so I'm eyeing the clock. This is going on a little longer than I had originally intended, but it is my hope that you are able to view this and pull out some of the areas that were stumbling blocks for me, and maybe areas of opportunity for you. And also, I hope I clarified questions you folks had with regards to Stronghold management, because, again, I did not go into enough depth on what that entailed. As always, I appreciate your feedback. Obviously, this video is only here because of your feedback. I'm responding to the video posted a couple of days ago. So if you have any more thoughts, please leave those in the comments of this video. And as always, I want to say thank you to everybody out there who supports me, whether that's by leaving the feedback in the comments or clicking the like button, subscribing to this channel, subscribing to the Patreon, buying a super thanks. I really appreciate everything the community does to support me. And as always, thanks for watching. Take care and happy gaming.